Without stating the obvious, the next 5 to 10 years appear to be filled with challenges. And that's quite the understatement, I suppose. Even politicians and world leaders, they're beginning to admit that food shortages, supply chain failures, power outages, and weather anomalies are likely to increase in frequency. And when creating these types of videos, my main intent is not to scare people, but rather hopefully bring enough insight to my community to really spur you to prepare. I personally see prepping as trying to gather reliable information, making an informed decision based off that information, and then pivoting and altering my course. Over the last 15 years, I've built a couple of businesses from the ground up, and one skill that has really served me well is trying to look out as far as possible to see what's coming on the horizon, and then to begin adjusting accordingly to really put my business and my team in the best position possible. And it's a skill that has served me well. But here's the thing, it's not about living in fear when I see challenges coming, but rather acknowledging what I must face. And I think that is what separates doomers from preppers. It would be easy to just simply discuss how bad things are getting, but rather I want to provide you with actionable solutions that you can hopefully implement. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a few of the most likely things that we will see in our immediate future, both here in America and worldwide. But I'll also share with you what you can do to mitigate the damaging effects. Again, as I stated earlier, having information and also having a plan are the two key components here. The events of the next 5 to 10 years will not affect everyone equally. Parts of the world, they're going to remain unscathed, but some parts of the world will be forever changed. And you're really going to have to take from this video how much of the things that I discuss here will impact you and what course of action is best for you in your prepping plans. If there's ever a time to prepare, it's now. Download the Start Preparing Survival Guide to help you prepare for any disaster. I'll post a link in the description and comments section below, or visit cityprepping.com/get started for a free guide to help you get started on your journey of preparedness. Food. In the last couple of years, we have seen significant catastrophes brewing in our food supply. After the Green Revolution, we realized larger harvests through fertilizer, pesticides, and select varietals. Consolidating smaller farms into large corporate monocultural farms produce more than we can even eat. It also puts all of our eggs in one basket, as they say. We relied on other countries and growing zones to keep us supplied with what we couldn't or wouldn't grow. Receiving those exports depended upon a supply chain that was functioning. This year, however, the prices for raw materials that constitute the fertilizer market, ammonia, nitrogen, nitrates, phosphates, potash, and sulfates, they've tripled. The jet streams that push the weather and distribute the rains have, for the most part, stalled. The western United States and parts of Europe are entering successive years of the worst drought in their recorded history. The heat and dry weather have decimated crops, creating an environment conducive to high winds and wildfires. Farmers have to choose, even while food demand is high and prices are equally high, whether bringing a crop to harvest or a herd to market is economically feasible. Finally, a war in Europe's breadbasket has stopped the flow of 29% of the world's wheat alone, but also sunflowers, corn, cooking oil, natural gas from which fertilizers are made, and more. Countries have responded by hoarding food and stopping exporting food and other resources. In the next 5 years, it's not looking to improve. Recent winds have actually depleted topsoils in areas of Kansas and other growing regions, reminiscent of the Dust Bowl event. The drought continues into its immediate third year of extreme, but has also steadily been going on for over a decade now. The war rages on, and Putin is using blockades and withholding exports to starve other countries into willful compliance with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The supply chains remain strained and exports remain low, so richer countries can't just buy their way out of this problem. Expect that the next 5 years will bring food scarcity in some parts of the world and famine in others. This often leads to social instability. Expect the weather won't improve, and when it does shift, it will do so in such a powerful way that the water won't be able to be contained. 5 years from now, you will reflect back to today and remember the luxury of variety and selection that was once in your grocery stores. You'll also remember the lower prices. As Kellogg's CEO recently said, the retailer's job is to protect the consumer. Our job is to protect our margins. The only problem is that the retailers will tell you that their job is also to protect their margins. The producers of products will tell you that their job is to be able to turn a profit. If you grow a portion of what you eat in 10 years, you will be better off. You might not be getting avocados from Mexico, Guatemalan or Vietnamese coffee, tropical fruits, or citrus year-round. Hearing from your grocer that a product is no longer available, or they're sold out or can't get any X, Y, or Z will become routine. In 10 years' time, a global food crisis is inevitable. Expect more and more countries to hold on to what they produce. This will have devastating consequences for nations depending on foreign sources. This will lead to famine and mass migrations. The individual solution is to turn to a more local source for your food. If it isn't grown near you or sourced in your region, you might no longer see it on your plate. Expect large-scale farming operations to attempt to diversify to hedge your bets against crop failure. These efforts take time, though, years of planning and forethought. Because of that, you can expect some land to be followed, even as harvests are lowered and prices go up. Countries will increasingly hoard food resources and decrease the amount that they export. The short answer is that you should enjoy what you eat today. In 10 years, your diet will likely be vastly different than what it is today. Weather and energy. I've already touched upon the mega drought, but the weather really needs its own category. When the water levels drop too low, hydroelectric dams have to reduce capacity or go offline altogether. This strains the national grid as loads are balanced to compensate for the reduced generation. Demand rises with the extreme heat waves and extreme freezing during winter. We saw what these weather extremes can do with California's rolling blackouts and the power outage in the winter in Texas. Expect to see community cooling and heating centers as people struggle to maintain a livable environment despite the extreme highs or lows of the mercury. Expect to see deserts in the middle of cities and towns where the water no longer flows, but is trucked in and distributed. As in the late 1970s, expect states to ban the use of landscape irrigation systems. People will be asked to let their lawns die off as water is channeled to corporations for bottling, manufacturing, and critical agricultural needs. When the rain does come, it will probably be in torrents. The dry and compacted ground will not experience the general saturation that it requires, but there will be flash floods as the water races off the land. The forecast for the next 5 to 10 years is equally as bad. One can't simply take estimates of Earth's temperature and rainfall all over the globe and the sun's irradiance and know with certainty a forecast that far out. We know that El Niño and La Niña cycles are getting longer and more robust. We know that though volcanic activity with its climate impacting emissions is low, we are overdue for something more significant. We know that the sun's solar cycle is at a low for flares and sunspots, but what is low will be high over the 11-year solar process where the sun shifts its polarity. We are overdue for another Carrington event of solar cycle 10, the most intense geomagnetic storm in recorded history. This event was notable in the technology-lacking year 1859. Imagine its impact of our technology-driven society today in solar cycle 25. We do know that the temperatures and greenhouse gases continue to rise. We know more water molecules are in the air, so when the rain comes, it is more intense. Expect that we will experience weather intensifying to have global impacts over the next 10 years. The first notable sign will be your body's thermostat. The term wet bulb effect will become part of our daily speech. If you don't know what that is, you should study this more, as it is beginning to impact parts of the world such as India. The next will be your power system failing again and again. You'll also notice more and more crop failures as monocultural farming lacks the strain diversity to literally weather the storms. Especially pay attention to the time of the next solar maximum, something around July of 2025. If this plays out as forecasted, it will be too late if you haven't started preparing for it, but most of the world will still not prepare. Water. The super rich have been buying up water rights for the last several years. We warned about this in several recent videos. What do they know that you will soon discover? Water, it's a commodity. On a blue planet, just a tiny fraction of the water is actually drinkable. Just a small fraction of the water can be used to grow food. Mega droughts have revealed how precarious access to water is. While some areas of the world are experiencing multi-year mega droughts, other parts of the world are experiencing deluges of rain and flooding. The jet streams are documented to be slowing, and weather patterns are slowing as well. So too is the distribution of water, which is slowed and unequal. Access to water in the next 5 years will become a crisis. Rationing and water theft are just probably the beginning. As this megadrought extends further into the next 5 years, expect a significant shift in population density away from dry regions to wetter climates. Also, expect once fertile farming areas to become too dry for agricultural endeavors. there's a real possibility that we will see another Dust Bowl in the next 5 to 10 years. All of these issues will result in mass migrations for some, soaring prices for all, and rationing and fines for others. Even if you have enough water for drinking, your area may not have enough for hydroelectric uses. In that case, expect the lack of water to impact your electrical grid. In fairness, one region's drought is another region's storm. Higher temperatures lead to more evaporation. Since 1901, global precipitation has increased at an average rate of 0.1 inches per decade, while rainfall in the contiguous 48 states has grown at 0.2 inches per decade. The same flooding that shut down potash mining operations in Canada and coal operations in China can be expected in the coming years. Tornadoes, hurricanes, cyclones, floods, and typhoons will be on the larger side, more frequent, and more destructive. That water may not be coming down in drought regions, but I assure you that it will come down. Expect weather and water inequities to intensify over the next decade. Other notable problems. Mass migration results from terrible weather, energy and food instability, lack of water or too much water, and war. When there is no food or water or means to regulate your environment, moving to a better location is essential to survive. This exposes people to more potential zoonotic illnesses as ecosystems crash into each other. As more and more wild animals are driven into exposure to domestic animals and people, the potential for another fatal zoonotic disease increases exponentially. Expect governments to try and contain mass migrations at their borders. Tempers will inevitably flare. In some countries, governments will collapse completely. Geopolitical instability will be a reality for many. This, of course, decimates trade agreements and supply lines. This stokes the base protective instincts of nationals. This encourages fear of others and hoarding activities. Buckle up if you thought the last several years have been politically divisive. The following 5 to 10 years will likely even be worse. There may be even clashes between state and federal forces, as states exert their rights and people abandon hope of the federal government bringing them any assistance. Civil unrest coming to your quiet city or state is highly likely, as there isn't anyone calming the public. The opposite is happening as domestic and foreign adversaries dump fuel on the fire and stoke divisiveness and distrust. Whether it's Russia invading more countries or China invading Taiwan, whether it's diseases or natural disaster, whether it's the greed of some or the financial collapse of fiat currencies, I assure you that the next 5 to 10 years will likely change the world more than the previous half century did. Your rights will likely be challenged more dramatically in the next 5 to 10 years than they have been in the rest of your life before. Economic volatility will affect all sorts of big-ticket items, such as cars, houses, and college loans. The world is already in a global recession and period of retraction. Inevitable distribution breakdowns of vital services like water and power will further deepen the problems. Crime, suicide, homelessness, and poverty rates will increase as people become more desperate and filled with despair. Income doesn't have an excellent track record of rising to help people with the challenges of getting by, but things will get more expensive. Basics like food, rent, fuel, water, and electricity will likely continue to rise in price. Moral retrenchment and authoritarian tendencies will increase on both liberal and conservative sides. So what can you do? Again, I'm not here to simply point out the doom and gloom I forecast in our collective future. While there isn't a way for you or me to prevent another Carrington event, flood, megadrought, power outage, war, financial collapse, or whatever, prepping in the right way provides us with the means to dampen the effects of these events. Prepping provides us with some insurance against the worst that life can throw at us. And you can work from a plan by taking the free risk assessment that I'm going to make available in the comments below to really help you understand your most pressing threats and how to protect yourself against them. Or you can sign up for a free Prepper Starter Guide, which I'll provide a link to in the description and comments section below. All that aside, a few solutions should pop out to you when you look at these threats over the next 5 to 10 years. First, you must ensure that you can go beyond just a basic 72-hour emergency supply of food and water. You should start by focusing, though, on those 3 days of food and water, and then once you've got that in place, I would encourage you to pivot to 3 weeks, and then from there, try to focus on building up to 3 months. And if you can get to 3 months, I can assure you that scaling up from there is not going to be that difficult. You should have water stored wherever you are, plus a means to filter and treat the water and collect precipitation. You should be growing and preserving your food and not entirely reliant upon a just-in-time delivery system, which continues to fail in more and more. And you should have the means to power what you need to survive if the grid goes down for, let's say, a week, a month, or even longer. And you should prepare to lock yourself in for your own safety. And you should have a bug out plan and bag in place for when staying at home is no longer a possibility. Before we hit the ground, the lowest point of any disaster, there is always a long, drawn-out stutter stepping. Even before wildfires destroy whole communities just in mere seconds, there is a long, drawn-out period of dryness and high winds. Before the water runs out entirely somewhere, there's a long drought, and people like me warn you how bad things are getting. Not everyone listens, and we all certainly don't react to the news in the same way. Some people will listen and some will ignore. And my point here is that there is still time to prepare and insulate yourself from even the worst of what the next 5 to 10 years can throw at us. But I will warn you, it will get increasingly more difficult to prepare as time goes by. And I'm just being honest with you. I think we are in a unique moment, an inflection point, if you will, the calm before the storm. And it will be harder for you to prep your food security after everyone else realizes that they should be doing the same. And it will be hard for you to get a generator or even batteries after the power goes out the second or third time in the same month in your area. Watch this risk assessment video, which I'll link to in the cards below. It's a video that I did a while back. And again, I'll post a link up in the cards above and in the description section. And in that video, there's a free copy of a spreadsheet that you can use to help you determine the most significant threats that you face. And with that information, you can begin to work backwards from the point of knowing to understand what you need to build up and then actually begin to put a plan in place to survive, even thrive after a disaster. And I wish I could tell you that things are looking up, that it's all going to be better within the next election or the next season, but I think you already know that's not the case. And honestly, I'm personally preparing for things to get a whole lot worse. I'm making decisions today to try to, as best I can, to insulate myself and my family from what I perceive to be coming on the horizon. And I'm just being honest here. Admittedly, it's a bit difficult seeing these issues out on the horizon, but I'm doing all I can to prepare, and only you can make your piece of the world better by the preps that you put in place today. You have 86,400 seconds each day, and it's your choice what you do with them. And I hope you choose to prep to survive an uncertain and turbulent future. As always, stay safe out there.